So dissertation is an independent piece of work. It's a chance for students to have a bit of fun, choose a topic they're interested in, and then spend 9 to 12 months exploring that topic.
Now, to my mind, a dissertation is actually an opportunity. So everyone gets so scared about a dissertation. They see it as this massive, great big 8 to 10,000 word, huge piece of writing, and they don't see it as a chance to really invest in something that you're interested in, something that you care about.
A dissertation is a sustained piece of research where you engage with literature and issues and concerns that have been explored by other academics and researchers, but in your particular setting. It's a conversation with other researchers on particular topical debates in geography.
And I guess it also builds in some skills for them in terms of anticipation, planning. Can you manage a project of some sort over 9 to 12 months and then deliver on it? So these are kind of skills you're going to need when you leave university and go out into the real world. And it also really does give you a chance to really get to the bottom of big issues that you're interested in exploring, rather than some of our courses, we have one semester and then you move on.
It's not something that I had done to this extent yet in my degree. I've been doing sessions here and there throughout my modules, but not to this extent. I did in total about 12 weeks of identification work in the microscopy labs, and that was really interesting because I'd never really experienced putting in that many hours in like one dedicated space before.
And then having the fun of having that data set that's yours only, it's unique, it's original, and you can then explore it with graphs, statistics, whatever the tools are to create a new piece of research.
A major tip that I give to someone who's doing a dissertation is to be brave and be bold and have faith in yourself and your skills.
So I think the most important thing about a dissertation is to think and read before you decide what you want to do. So you have a good idea, maybe you've heard something on the radio or a lecturer said something to you, or you read a piece of newspaper that strikes your interest. What you need to do is do a bit of digging around, a bit of homework over a number of weeks to try and find out whether anyone else has done a similar topic, and you can use all your research skills. So you basically try and plan a project over a certain amount of time. So anticipate all the challenges you might face.
And think about what you want to learn and discover in that process. Do you want to do some field work and learn some fieldwork skills? Do you want to get involved in the lab to learn some analytical skills in the lab? Do you want to study a particular area, a particular set of ideas, an author? So think about your motivation for what you want to find out.
Get as much advice from staff as possible. Even get as many opinions as possible on what it is that you're doing to make sure that you've covered, so you're not missing something out or you're overlooking maybe a flaw in your design or something like that.
It's just to continually make and record your observations. There's nothing worse than coming back 3 months later, having thought, oh, what happened that day, and you've completely forgotten to make that observation.
So you'll soon find a little bit further down the line, once you've read around the literature and you've formulated your research questions, you want something that you will continue to be interested in. So make sure when you're choosing your topic that you have a vested interest in that area.
The key thing is to have a really clear question, a really clear goal as to what are you trying to investigate. So that means that you need to be really clear in your site selection. You need to know why you're going to a particular site. What is it about that site that's going to inform the story?
Think visually as well. So think not just in terms of gathering data and analysing it, but then how you represent that data. So think, what kind of graphs can you make? What kind of maps can you make? What kinds of diagrams can you make as well? Because
to do any good research project involves a time commitment, but it does mean that you need to start the process early. And ideally when you have some dedicated time where you can rather than trying to fit in some research time, an hour here, an hour there, maybe a dedicated block of time, or a week at a time, or certainly a day at a time. Ideally, start this over the summer, before lectures start to get in the way, and before you have other coursework and other assessment tasks that you need to complete that will interfere in your research time.
So if you're thinking of a particular dissertation topic, come down and speak to our technical team. They're very approachable, they're very experienced. Come down and tell us what you want to do, what you want to do out in the field. We'll tell you what field kit you can take out, what facilities are available when you bring those samples back to the laboratories.
The iTrax is just one of a number of X-ray fluorescence instruments that we have. Obviously it's specifically designed for dealing with cores. Not all samples are cores. So we have a benchtop XRF for use with discrete samples. They might be soil samples that have been collected or even water samples that can analyse.
Yeah, we've got a fantastic range of field equipment. For example, if you're doing microclimates, we've got hygrometers, anemometers, we've got data loggers that can measure temperature, relative humidity. If you're looking at sediments, and we've got Russian corers, we've got gouge corers, we've got a heavy-duty Stitz percussion corer, we've got a lake sediment corer, we've even got 2 boats. If you're a human geographer, we have cameras, we have infrared cameras, GoPros, even if it's something as simple as a dictaphone. Come down, tell us what you're doing as part of your dissertation. We'll tell you what equipment we've got and how we can help you. We'll even give you the training.
We've got 6 main instruments: the ICP-OES, Inductively Coupled Plasma Optical Emission Spectrometer, and Inductively Coupled Plasma Mass Spectrometers. These are used for elemental analysis for principally heavy metals, but full range of metals from lithium right through to uranium.
I think at the moment geography is probably the #1 laboratory for analytical capabilities. The iTrax, there's already 3 of those in the UK. Much of the analytical facilities like the desktop XRF, a lot of earth sciences departments have those, but very few geography departments have the geochemical capabilities that we have.
For finer material, you can get a far better analysis using our laser granulometer, which passes a laser through a suspension with the particles from your sample in. The laser light is scattered, and the pattern of that scattering tells us information about the size of the particles that are present.
Well, we've got a wonderful selection of different microscopes, in fact, for looking at objects of every possible size. So it might be that you're interested in, say, fragments of wood. So we've got microscopes that can magnify something like that and give you a beautiful image of that. You can scale down and look at small things like charcoal fragments or insect remains. So we've got the kind of binocular stereoscopes where you can actually handle stuff with tweezers really easily, kind of things that are probably just visible to the naked eye, but you need some magnification. Right then down through the high-powered microscopes where you can really start looking at that microscopic world, things like pollen grains, fungal spores, algal spores, diatoms, and that kind of whole world of microscopic objects.
On average, amongst our undergraduate cohort, about 1/3 of the undergraduates do urban sort of topics for their undergrad dissertations. So I think there are particularly interesting issues around gentrification, which is always a popular one amongst students, issues around transport, so all the stuff around transport infrastructure, cycling. There's some really interesting dissertations to be done around the whole kind of bike schemes in major cities. So in the UK, we've got Manchester's got its own bike scheme, London's got its scheme, but there are lots of other cities around the world that have bike schemes which are interesting. Issues around housing. So there's lots of interesting dissertations to be done around housing. Sounds a bit unsexy, but you know, one of the big challenges about how cities house their population, particularly when cities around the world are growing in size.
I think there's lots of interesting things happening locally at the moment. I think that's the other association with dissertations. So people think, oh, I must go away, I must go and do something really exotic and go and collect mangrove samples from Madagascar or something. And yeah, if you can do that, then great. I mean, there's big ethical concerns with working overseas like that, which you'd have to work through the dissertation advisor. But I think there's an awful lot of stuff on your doorstep that people overlook. So from a development perspective at the moment, there's a really interesting landscape of charity and of aid. So there's some colleagues in GDI have recently produced reports about charity now starting at home, and in the last few years the international aid landscape was very much about giving overseas, and in fact more recently charity has been motivated much more to local charities. So I'm really interested in why is that? Why have we had this shift towards giving to local organisations? And it'd be really interesting to look at young people's approach to sustainability. I mean, yeah, things like recycling, okay, but bigger picture questions. So you are the generations of the future. How are we going to generate sustainable urban spaces that are going to grow with the population. You've got these rapidly sprawling cities. How can we meet the travel needs of those populations? The accessibility to services, for example.
You follow your interests and be brave. At the beginning it's really hard because you've got to sort of pluck an idea from nowhere and you've got to go with it, but it's like a seed, it will grow. You've got to feed it by reading around the subject area, and you've got to have some confidence that it will work out in the end. And the sooner you can get that confidence going, the more you'll enjoy it and the better the end result will be.